In the last class, we have seen how to set and how to reset a session. In order to remove an item from this session, we use the unset, and in order to destroy this session, we use the session underscore. Now, this is a general step how the things are being used up. Suppose if you want to track a person's login, then right at the beginning you start this session. Whatever the information the user is giving, like a username and password, use a technique for authenticating the user, that is verifying the username and password. If the user is authenticated, store the credentials of the user in the session. If it is not, because you have started a session, destroy the session altogether. This is the general step. Now, in the later case, if you want to store any information regarding this session, every time you start a page, you start with the session underscore start, then see whether this particular user information is already there. So, if the user is authenticated, you are storing some information of the user in a variable called as user, and you verify whether that is there. If it is there, well and good. If it is not there, the user is not yet logged in, redirect them to the login page. The same thing when the user wants to move out of the session, then you destroy the elements within this session. You send a cookie with a negative expiration time. I will come back to that. How do you set that thing? You have to ask the browser to delete that cookie. Finally, you say session underscore destroy. This is the step. And in the last class, I have already demonstrated that thing. Whenever a user creates a session, what we do within our program is per user session, we store the details in a separate memory location that is identified by the session number. And in the last class, I have already shown you that this information is actually stored in a file, and this information is usually stored in the form of a name of the variable, the type of it, the length of it, and the value. This kind of way in which you are usually storing that. I have already shown that thing. And once it is stored, you can anytime get the information. All these values which are there, which are specific for a given user, can be accessed using the session ID, and most of this time the sessions are identified by a special type of a cookie that is passed. However, if the browser does not accept the cookie, you can at any time use the URL rewriting for doing that. By default, the PHP will expire the session after 1440 seconds, that is after 24 minutes. It will automatically destroy the values. Now, if you want to extend this value, you can do it, or if you want to reduce this value, you are free to do that thing. One important thing you must understand, that if the browser is closed, that session automatically is gone because the browser will not handle the cookie. When you close it, the cookie that is there with the browser gets destroyed. Afterwards, the user will not have the session ID. Then whatever information that you stored per user will be of no use. Suppose if you are using the URL rewrite, if the browser says I'm not accepting the cookie, then if you are storing the session with the URL, then if they move out of that particular page wherein the URL does not exist, the session automatically expires. You can set the way in which the PHP handles the session by going to the php.ini and making some changes in a few of the parameters. Now, if you want to say that a session must use only cookies, you can go to a specific location in the php.ini. This is the configuration file of the PHP. You can say that sessions must always use the cookies. In this case, if the browser does not accept the cookie, PHP will not be able to track the sessions. The next one is you can change the name that is used by the PHP, that's the cookie. And in the last class, again, I've shown you how to change the name of the cookie by using a function. And I've told you that if you use the function, every time that function has to be called before starting the session. Instead of doing that, you can go here and then set name of the session ID is something else, like your company name.id or something.id or just an ID. It's up to you. The next one is session auto start. This means to say that whether the PHP has to automatically start the session when it is requested or whether it has to wait for session underscore start method. You might have used PHP or you might have used JSP and other other programming languages and or the ASP.NET. In those frameworks, the session is automatically created. You don't have to ask them to create a session. Whereas here, when you set it 0, it means to the PHP that start the session only when I request it. Do not auto start the session. Whereas the other programming languages or the other framework for that matter automatically start the session even if you don't request for the session. So if you want the PHP to automatically start the session, set it as 1. 0 means false, 1 means true. So you can say that start it automatically. Next one is the lifetime. So by default, it is going to store like 1140. You can set the value to 0 or some other value. If you set it to 0, that means as long as the browser is active, keep the cookie. When the client closes the browser, the cookie has to be destroyed. The next one is the path where the cookie has to be sent. In this case, the path indicates the root of your application. That means the starting point of your application. The cookie will be available. If you say / the cookie will be available everywhere within your application. However, if you set it to something else, for example, if you set the cookie like this /MSC like this. Now, if there is the other folders like /MBA /MCA and so on, that means to say that at the root we have right at the top we have a root, and then we are subdividing this one into various sections, like we have the section for MCA, MSc and MBA and so on. Now suppose if you set it and say that I want the cookie to be available only for under MSc section, I don't want it to be available under MBA or MS or MCA and so on and so forth. If you say this line, that means to say, if you put that line over here, that means to say that the cookie will be available only in this region. What is the meaning of it is, you are telling the browser that if the request is coming to this location, anything inside this location, then only send the cookie. If the request is coming for MBA or MCA or any other section, if it is going under this section, do not send this cookie to that location. That is the meaning of saying path. The next one is the domain where the cookie has to be sent. The meaning of saying domain is when the cookie has to be sent. If you just say www.amit.edu, if you specify that value over here, that means to say that whenever somebody visits the amit.edu from that browser, this cookie will be sent there. Now, mostly what happens is there will be subsection within, usually called a subdomain within the main domain. For example, the college might have created like www.mca.amit.edu, or they might have created a subdomain like www.mba.amit.edu. Now again, if you specify the domain as www.mca.edu, then this cookie will not be sent to any request that is going for a MBA. So you can tell the browser that I want only these cookies to be sent to one domain and the other cookies to be sent on to the other domain. However, if you want the cookies to be available across all the domain, then you have to say .emit.edu. So when you say dot here without specifying anything, that means to say that it must be available for all the subdomains which will come over here. It could be MBA, it could be MCA, it could be PGDCA, it could be MSA. Any subdomain that is there under emit.edu will get that thing. Usually, how do you make the distinction? The general way is you may have like a news.company.com, or you may have something like product.company.com, or you may have like say sales or say service.company.edu.com. So you can say that some cookies will come only to this location, some cookies will come only to this location, and the others will come to only this location. You can specify that by typing the domain over here. If you want it to be available across all the subdomains, then keep only the dot here and the company name. So if you just type this one, including the dot, so .company.edu.com, then it will be available for all the subdomains. Now, how do I modify that cookie? To modify the cookie, we have a special function called as session set cookie parameters. You can specify the lifetime of the cookie. You can specify the path of the cookie. You can specify the domain of the cookie. You can specify whether the cookie has to be sent in a secured connection only. That means the cookie has to be transferred only in the HTTP request, or you can say whether the cookie will be available in the other protocols. So if you say that HTTP only is false, that means to say that the cookie will be transferred using the other protocol if this protocol supports them. If you say HTTP only, that means to say that the cookie will not be transferred using the other protocol. Which is the other protocol? The most frequently used protocol is the HTTPS, that is the secured HTTP. So if you want the cookie to be transferred securely, remember cookie is just a plain text. So if you are storing a credit card number inside the cookie, and if you are transferring that across the wire, a hacker can hack into the packet and they can easily get the credit card numbers. So you have to, if it is a sensitive data, you must say to it that the data is transferred only in the secured mode. The cookies are getting transferred only in the secured mode, not in the ordinary HTTP request. So let's look at how we can set the session. Now let me go over here. I will show you one other function. I'll come back to this explanation. Like this set, we have a get. Now get will get the values in the form of an array. So let me go over here and let me create a session. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say session underscore start. This will start the ordinary session, and here I'm going to say print underscore r, and I'm going to say so I'm just saying get the parameters. It will be in the form of an array. So if I run this one, I'm going to get the details of the cookie that was there. So the lifetime of this cookie is 0. The path is the root, and The domain is not specified, secured is not specified, HTTP is not specified. Now, how do I change the values? To change the values, I use the other option. I'm going to say session underscore set, and I can set the values. I will start with the first one. How do I set the value? To set the value, you have to specify the lifetime of this session. The lifetime has to be specified in terms of a second. And the way in which we do is we have a built-in function called as time. This is going to give us the Unix timestamp. Again, I'm not very sure whether you're familiar with the Unix timestamp. If you're not familiar with that, let me just show you what is that thing is going to do. So if you just call this function time, I will ignore the other part. And if I just run this one, it's going to give you that. Ignore this part because it is there as a part of something else. Okay. So this is not there. It's there because it was there in that page. So this is what you are going to get. This is the Unix timestamp. Now it corresponds to the present second. The time when I call that particular method, it's a number of seconds that have passed from 1970. So January 1970, how many seconds have passed? It is giving that particular thing. This is the Unix timestamp, and there is a reason for why they have the time and other things. If you are really interested in, just go to this Google and then search for Unix timestamp. They will tell you what is the significance of that particular thing, and this is going to give you the second. Now this function is going to give you the current second value. So at this particular 2:30 today, that it's going to give you the second. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm supposed to give you the second when the things are going to expire. So I'm going to say session underscore set cookie parameter, and I'm going to say current time. For this, add 60 seconds. So whatever the time at which this function is called, add 60 seconds to it and then run this one. So if this means to say that I am saying to the PHP that change the value. Now I'm going to do it directly here, not at this place. I'm going to do it before I start this session so that it will be highlighted to me. So I'm going to then run this particular thing. Before I run it, let me show you the first output. You notice here, this I've not executed that script. You notice by default the lifetime was 0. That means to say that you are telling the browser that when the browser is closed, this particular cookie has to be destroyed. So 0 means destroy the cookie when the browser is closed. Now, when I run this particular application or particular page for that matter, I'm going to get a different number here. It just means to say that when the Unix timestamp is this, destroy the cookie. That means to say that after this time, when I call this method, after 60 seconds from now, whatever the Unix time that corresponds to this particular instance of the time, add 60 seconds to that, it's going to be this value, destroy this cookie. So after the 60 seconds, the browser will automatically destroy this cookie. So even if you don't close the browser, it's going to destroy the cookie. Now what if I want to wait for one more, or let's say 1 hour, then multiply it by 60. So 60 into 60 is going to be 1 hour. What if I want to go for 1 day? Multiply it with the 24. That becomes 1 day, 60 seconds, 60 minutes, then and 24 hours. What if you want to retain it for 30 days? Multiply. Go on multiplying it. Get the Unix timestamp. So what is the meaning of it? From this instance, after 30 days, the cookie will be destroyed. What if you want to go for 1 year? Multiply it with the 12. So from this instance, for the next 1 year, it's going to be there with the browser. You have to give it in terms of seconds, and the best way of getting the second is go for the Unix timestamp and then show the value. So if I run this one, you will notice that it's going to give me one long number. It's going to give me that number that you can imagine that number will be after 1 year. Okay, so this is the timestamp. Now, identical. The next part that you can set here is part where the things will come. I'm going to just say that this is my default value, so plus 60. Then I'm going to say it must be sent to MSC only. So something slash MSC. If the request goes to something dot MSC, then this particular information will be sent there. So if I now run it, it's going to show me that the path is MSC. I am changing it. This is the current output. So what I've done is I've taken all the possibilities. So this one is the expiry time. Expiry time is when the cookie has to be destroyed. This is the path where the cookie has to be sent, like say MSC. This is a folder. That folder must be there within your project. So if it is coming to that particular, if the request is going to that folder, you can do it. The next one is the domain where you want to send it. Suppose if I want it to be sent to every subdomain within the emit.edu, I can do that then. So just put it like this, and then put a dot. It is not happy with the dot because the dot is a concatenation operator. So it just gets confused when I try to put this one. So you can say whether secured is true or false. True is 1, you can specify this one, and the next one is HTTP. So what is the meaning of it is, you are saying that the cookie will last for next 60 seconds. It has to be sent to any request that is going for a folder within MSC. I think I have it twice here. Okay. It must be sent to any subdomain within the emit.edu. It must be transferred only when there is a secure connection. That means to say that when you run your project, you will notice that your request that you are doing here, this request, even though the browser does not show this request, you can notice over here, this request is actually HTTP. So if you say this is true, that means to say that the cookie will not be transferred in HTTP request. It will be transferred only when the request is of the type HTTPS. This is secure HTTP. Only if it is a secure HTTP, it's going to transfer there. Okay? Otherwise, it's not going to transfer. The last one is, do you want the cookie to be transferred only in the HTTP mode? Now, if you set both of them true, they will be conflicting, because I am saying that it must be true and I am saying that it must be sent only in the HTTP. Both are contradicting to each other. So one of them must be false, the other one must be true. Now I'm just showing you the output to say what will be the output of get parameter. So if you run this one, this is what you are going to get. Now this is the parameter that the PHP has read. I have set the time, I have set the path, I have set the domain. I'm saying it is secure and it must be HTTP only. This will not work in real life because the browser will not be able to transfer the cookie back to you, because whenever HTTP comes, you are telling the browser that do not transfer. Whereas here you are saying that HTTP must be encrypted, then only send it. So the browser will get confused. Again, if you go to the location here, and if you go to the options, and if you ask the browser, show me the details of this particular cookie now, and if I go over privacy, and then if I ask it to show the cookie to me, and if I type the local, there will be a cookie with the PHP ID. This is the one. It still has that ID with it. This is. I have a plugin. I think I will show that plugin in the lab itself. I have a plugin that actually shows you all the details within the cookie. The browsers usually don't show all the details, but you can get the plugin that shows it. I have it in the essential, and I will show it in the essential. I won't waste time now in the theory class. So this is what you get it. So you can set the value of the cookie. So you can say the lifetime, that is how long the cookie has to be survived. If you set a positive value, that means to say that so many seconds after Unix timestamp, so many seconds the cookie will survive. If you set the path where the cookie will be sent, if you set the domain where it has to be sent, to which domain it has to be sent, remember the domain will be usually the same location where the cookie was received or from which the cookie was received. You cannot say that Emmet will give you a cookie and you have to send to eBay. The browser will not do it. Okay? So if it is from Emmet, it can go to any of the subdomain of the Emmet, like mba.emmet or nca.emmet. Subdomain within the Emmet can receive it, but I can say that this cookie I am giving you, when you go to the ebay.com or when you go to the google.com, send this cookie to them. The browser will not do it. Whichever domain has given that cookie, either to the same domain or the subdomain within that particular domain, will receive it, not to others. Okay, and that is true even for when you're receiving it. You cannot ask the browser, okay, give me all the cookies that the Google has given to you. The browser will not give that thing. So browser will send the cookie only to the domain which has sent it, not to other domains. Okay. However, there is a way in which you can use the JavaScript to make the browser send something to the other domain. That is all different story altogether. That's not part of PHP. The next part is secured. Whether if you say true, that means to say that the cookie has to be sent over a secured connection. HTTP only if you make it as true, that means you are telling the browser that this cookie has to be sent only in the HTTP connection, not using the other connection. So identical to the set, you have a get cookie that will receive the cookie that was set, and it's going to show you all the values which are there in the form of a array. So it's going to show you the information in the form of an array. So you can open that thing and look at that thing. Whenever we set a cookie, most of the time we keep the cookie for a short duration. However, you can change the time. So when you set the value, by the way, I have not told you one important thing, and that is regarding the lifetime. Now, how do you force the browser to destroy a cookie? I have set a cookie. Now, how do I force the browser to destroy the cookie? The way in which I do it is, I give a time that has already passed. So what's the meaning of it? I'm going to say expire this cookie from the current time minus 1 hour. That means if time will give you the current time, even though it's in the Unix time, but it's going to give you the current time minus 1 hour. That means to say that when this cookie, when this information reaches the browser gets a warning saying that this cookie has already expired, just destroy it. So how do you destroy the cookie is by setting a negative time or by setting a time that is already passed. So if you set a positive time, that means you are setting a future time. You are asking the browser to destroy it after 1 hour. If you make it as negative, means you are saying that you should have destroyed it 1 hour before this time. So the browser will immediately destroy it. Now, if you set the time as 0, that means to say that this is a special value to the browser. If you set it 0, it means to say to the browser that the cookie has to be retained until the browser is active. If the user closes the browser, along with the browser getting closed, destroy the cookie. So 0 means keep it active as long as the browser is active. The minute the browser is closed, cookie has to be destroyed. Any positive value means it has to be retained till that time. And when I say any positive, if the value of that positive number happens to be in the past, that means to tell the browser that the cookie has to be destroyed. Okay. So this is how we are doing it, and let me now go back to the place where I have shown you a small code here, wherein I showed you how the user is getting logged out. Now, if you look at this code, let me come back to that page. This is the place where the user is logging out. So when the user is logging out, you close the session and you tell the browser that the cookie is expired. So current time minus 3600. Okay, and that means to tell the user that this cookie, or to the browser that this cookie has already expired, and then you destroy the session. Remember, when you call the session underscore destroy, it will only destroy the session on the server side. It will not destroy the cookie on the browser side. If you want that thing to happen, you have to set the cookie. I will come back to that part. How do you set the cookie in the next topic? So let me come back to the place where I stopped. So this is there. Okay. So you can set the time. It depends. For example, if you are using an e-commerce site, or if you are using a mail, that is an email site, people will take long time to type their email. So 24 minutes may be too short. So you can keep the cookie active for maybe half a day till the user types the entire thing. And if there is no activity for the after half a day, you can expire it. So it depends. If it is a small thing wherein you are asking the user to check the result, so the result has to be checked within a short time. So you can set the cookie time, expiry time as 10 minutes or maybe 5 minutes, within which after this time you are going to expire this session and you will not retain the value. Remember, there is a pros and cons for retaining the cookie for short time as well as long time. If you retain the cookie for short time, the user may get irritated because every now and then they will find that their session has expired. If you retain the cookie for a long time, you will be simply wasting the resource on the server. Every time a session is started, the PHP has to verify the cookie and then map the information to a file. So it is reading something from the file. I have shown you the file where the PHP is writing. So every time you do something with this session, it's actually reading and writing from the file, and you know very well, trying to access the file, in particular, performing an input-output operation is always slower as compared to the performing something on the memory. So be careful with the session. You start the session only when it is required, and you close the session immediately once you feel that it is no longer required. Do not keep the session active because it's going to hit the performance of your application. When more and more number of people enter into your site, and if you unnecessarily maintain a session for a longer time, you will find that your application is slowing down like anything. So keep the session active as long as you really require it. After that, immediately destroy it. You can save the disk space on the server, as well as you can get some performance boost on your application. Now, how do I destroy the session? To destroy a session, you just call the session underscore destroy. This will automatically destroy the session. Now, let's look at what is a cookie. Remember, both cookie as well as the session is a way of storing the user information. So whenever you want to store some details about the user, you can either use the cookie or you can use the session. Session in turn uses the cookie for identifying the session ID. So it is using a cookie just to identify the user. However, the details of the user will be stored on the server. Just to recall what we have seen, when a user visits your site, what you are usually doing is when they make their first request, you set a cookie and give them. And what is there in this cookie is the ID. So in this case, the cookie contains only the ID, and whenever they are coming back, they will get back this ID, and you use this ID and map that ID to a file which contains the details. So you will notice here the user details are stored on the server, not on the client machine, except the session ID. The other part is stored on the session. However, if you feel like storing or saving some space on the server, you can ask the client to store this information and get them back whenever they are coming back. So what is the meaning of it? Instead of just storing the ID, you can ask the client to store the name of the person, their email, and so on and so forth. You can create many cookies and then give it to the browser and tell the browser, this information you hold it. Next time when you are coming back, just give me all of them back to me. You can do it. Okay. So cookie, even though it's a small piece of text, you can use only the cookie without the sessions. You can use the cookies to store the information with the customer along the inside the client side. One thing you must understand, again, both of them have plus and minus point. What is the advantage of storing the information about the client on this server? One of the advantages is it is more secure rather than storing at the client side. The other advantage over here is over the time client can make changes and modify or manipulate the values which are already there with them. Because the values are there with them, they can destroy it, they can change it, they can maybe manipulate the content of it and then send a wrong information back to you. So it is a bad thing. Next one is the cookies. If you store 100 cookies with the client, all of the 100 cookies has to be written back to you. Then your processing will start. That means every request will get that 100 cookies to the other side. Even if only one small get request is going, along with that, a bulk of cookies will also travel. So that means to say that their connection or their speed with which they are able to access will slow down. More about the problem of the cookies later. So let's look at what is a cookie. So cookie is a small piece of text that the web server can store on the user hard disk, and the cookies are usually used to store some information about the customer that can be retrieved later. When I say some information, most of the time it is the ID that is getting stored. The other things that are getting stored with the user is some of them, like Google, they use the cookies to store what you were searching. So I don't know whether you have realized it or not. If you go to the YouTube and if you watch the movies, say if you search for a Hindi movie and then start watching the movie, and later tomorrow if you go and start searching for a PHP tutorial, you will find that along with the PHP tutorial options, it will also show you one of the options as on the latest Hindi movie. So how did it know that I was watching a Hindi movie or I was watching some other thing is, when I go to a particular section, the Google actually creates a cookie and then dumps that cookie onto your machine. Next time when you are coming back, it searches where you were there, what was the things that you were searching, and it will start filtering its criteria according to your last search. So if you want, you try that thing. Google, in fact, Google is one of the sites that is heavily doing this one. Every time you go to a Google site, almost it will try its level best to get other information about the user, like what is your taste, what kind of site you are visiting, and so on and so forth. And again, if you are using the Chrome for that matter, whenever you want to make any request, if you look at the Chrome, the request actually reaches the Google first and then it gets transferred. So that is the way in which the Google is tracking the user. So when I say I want to search something or I want to go to a particular website, the first thing it will do is it will send that request to the Google site so that the Google knows that somebody has visited that particular site. Okay, so this is the problem with it. So if I look at my own machine over here, if I search for the cookie that was given to me by the Google, you will notice that even though I am not logging in, even though I am not doing anything, you will find that almost there are so many things that the Google is trying to give. So you notice here, so if I just say Google dot, so many cookies are already given by the Google. Maybe one of them is some ID. This reads like an ID. Then these are some information that the Google is trying to track. Okay, so this cookie will also go along with the request, and you notice over there, this is what I wanted to show you. If you set the time for the cookie, it's going to say when it is going to expire. So this cookie is going to expire on 17th February 2016. So if this is there, even if I close my browser, shut down my machine, restart it, it will be there in my machine until 17th of February. How did they do it? They set the expiration time for that. Okay, and if you look at here, if you're a bit lucky, you will find where it is going. And if you notice over here, it is trying to send not to the google.com. So this cookie will not be sent to the google.com. Rather, if I go to anything inside code.google.com, this cookie will be sent. Now, suppose if I go to this one, you notice that it will be sent to only to this location, that is accounts.google.com. Maybe that is my Gmail ID that it is trying to track. But you have some things over here. This is the YouTube. So you notice that it's trying to track me on that YouTube.